Joining me is on-air personality of NESN WEEI, Travis Thomas, who makes his return to the Hub of Champions for the first time since January 16th. I'm Shukri Wright. Be
Wow.
sure to subscribe, follow the podcast wherever you get the podcast, and tell all the Boston sports fans to do the same as we continue the coverage of the NBA Finals on the Hub of Champions on the Bleav Network, where the last three episodes have been primarily all about the NBA Finals and the Celtics and so forth. That continues with Monday's edition of the Hub of Champions. My man Travis Thomas of NESN and WEEI. How are you doing, my man?
Bro, that is crazy that it's been that long since I've been on, man. We got to make this we got to make this more reoccurring, bro, but I'm good,
Yeah, I
man. You know,
agree.
I was at game 2, man, for Celtics Mavs, and it was crazy. I got a chance to talk to the fans pregame out on Causeway Street, and then
Yeah.
I was in the building, I was in the garden, just absolutely electrifying, man. The boos for Kyrie, the cheers for Porzingis anytime he even breathes. I mean, it's just like it's an amazing feeling, man. And look, it wasn't pretty, but we've seen some of the games with the Celtics where they don't get style points, but style
Yeah.
points be damned. A win is a win, man, especially in the
Exactly.
NBA Finals.
And you know what's interesting is that a lot has been made about Kyrie's return back to Boston, um, and and especially him being the leader of a team that has made it to the NBA Finals. Before I even get to the games itself, because now games 1 and 2 is in the books. The Celtics are up 2-0 in the series. Before I even
Right.
get to any of that, because you already know how I feel about the city of Boston and how much I miss home and everything.
Right.
So I gotta ask you, what was the atmospheres like at the Garden when you were there for Game 2? And I'm just gonna presume like Game 1 as well, but just what was the atmosphere like at TD Garden? Celtic fans getting ready to go into the arena. Paint the picture for me, because I gotta get a taste of it.
Well, what was cool was before I went into the garden, my assignment for NESN was to talk to fans and to like get the
Right.
pulse of the fans and see what was going on. And so
Uh
one
huh.
of the questions I was asking was, are we getting the brooms out? Is this going to be a sweep? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. But the explanation behind it was what sets Boston sports fans apart from other fan bases. And what
Yep.
I mean is, I've gone out and done these, fan flavor pieces where you go out and you
Mhm.
talk to the fans, whatever. Everyone's just drunk, yelling "woo" and happy for their team, and you know, they're like they're gonna sweep them because we're the best, right? But
Yeah.
what makes Boston fans great is they say, "Yeah, get out the brooms," and here's why. And it's almost like they predicted game 2 to a T, and it's because they were working off of game 1. So it
Yeah.
was very much like we already know Luca's about to cook. We know Luca's going to cook. And the key is shutting down the other pieces, Kyrie included. You have
Hmm.
got to shut down PJ Washington. You can't let him beat you. You can't let Derek Lively beat you. You can't let Kyrie beat you.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what happened. And so I'm like, damn, like these fans get it. Another question I asked was, remember Jason Kidd's comments? Well, Jalen Brown's the best player on the team. And
Hmm.
then even though later he said it was out of context, Drew Holiday sort of doubled down on that. And so, sure enough, of course, I'm asking fans, it's a lot of talk right now. Who's the best player on the team? Who do you think's the best player? And they were so smart in that, look, we still believe Jason Tatum's the best all around player on this team. But Jalen Brown's playing great right now. Derek White's playing great right now. Porzingis is playing great. Drew Holiday's playing great. And
Hmm.
Jason Tatum can beat you in other ways. So again, it's showing that intelligence of the Boston sports fan. They're not just out there
Yep.
running their mouth. They are very highly intelligent
Hmm.
about how their teams win. And so I thought that was very telling. As far as in the garden, it's what you would expect, brother. I mean, it was insane. It was electric. And one thing about these fans that I appreciated, they are as loud in the beginning of the game as they are at the end, and they just kept that intensity throughout. It was very impressive.
There's a handful of things I want to say in response to that. First and foremost, I saw a clip and I posted it in my Instagram story, in which that Boston Globe, they had this video where they recorded just how loud a decibels was for inside the Garden for games one, I think game one and two, if I'm not mistaken, if not just game one, in which that the decibel went up as high as I Bleav 110. Like
Hmm.
110, like yeah, like I kid you, if you can look on my Instagram story, I shared it yesterday, and I thought it was really impressive. Like, and then it didn't shock me whatsoever because like I've been to so many Bruin games and I know how loud it can really get,
Hmm.
and as well as like having gone to Celtic games in the past. But I thought that video was really telling, and it confirmed what you said in terms of like the Boston Celtic fans inside TD Garden, maintaining that same level of intensity from tip off, from even before tip off, all the way through the end, and whatnot. And you said something in terms of doing fan interviews, and in terms of getting that
Hmm.
taste of Boston sports fans and what makes Boston sports fans different from anywhere else in the country. It's I have experience with that firsthand. So in 2021, I had the chance, and it was just by volunteer, but I had the chance to do some street interviews for the old Toucher and Rich program on 98.5 The Sports Hub at that time.
Hmm.
And I did two of them. The first one, it was during the, I believe, if I remember correctly, it was during the either the ALDS against the Rays at that year, and the only mistake I made was being near the bucket guy. If you've been to Fenway Park, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that are in Boston that are gonna be listening to this, you know what I'm talking about. The bucket guy. That was my mistake. And then on the air, literally live on the air, I was given constructive criticism by both Rich Shirley and as well as John Wallach. The second time I did the interview, it was during the ALCS against the Houston Astros. And this time I found a much better spot on Lansdowne. But I say all that to say that they're very, very intensely passionate, but then also
Yeah.
the knowledge to come along with that.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I personally have grown to appreciate about Boston sports fans over the years is not just that they're passionate and they're just a bunch of like crap talkers or whatnot. No, but rather these are people that know their team. They know their
Yeah.
team inside and out. And I recently found out the hard way, like, hey, you can't always like just throw a lit match into a barrel of gasoline and think it's not going to explode with Bruin fans. Like, you just can't do that. But to your point, like you nailed it beautifully. Whereas Celtic fans and Boston sports fans, they're truly one of a kind in this country. Whereas it's not just the passion, it's the knowledge that comes along with it. And like it's definitely during these times where like I'm thinking about like the atmosphere, knowing how rowdy it can get for like the finals. Because I was there 2 years ago. I was
Right.
in the midst of it 2 years ago, so I know firsthand how crazy, how rabid it is. But now with this team in this championship run, it's different. In Travis, like again, before we get to the games and whatnot, but how special is it for you being a part of the coverage and having the opportunity to cover let's be honest, what is going to be a championship team, whether it be in a few days or maybe in just about a week's time.
Honestly, bro, it feels very personal to me, and the reason why, I brought up, I've been very fortunate in my career. You know this from loving sports your whole life,
Hmm.
but it is rare. It's hard for teams to win championships. It is just hard as hell, man. And so
Yeah.
the fact that I've had a chance to cover a Stanley Cup champion in the Washington Capitals, a
Yep.
team who had Heartbreak City throughout the Alex Ovechkin era, they finally get over the hump. I covered them beating the Penguins. Then I went on to cover them beating the Golden Knights in the finals. And to see them capture that Stanley Cup that's been so elusive to that franchise was awesome. And then you turn around the next year, the Washington Nationals go on this
Mm.
improbable run to win the World
World Series.
Series. And so to be a part of that was crazy. I mean, they beat the Dodgers, they beat all these great teams, and so that was improbable. And so I already, this is why I say it's personal. I already felt like I have made it. Like, man, I got a chance to cover two championship teams. Many broadcasters, many fans don't get the chance to feel one, let
Mm.
alone two in back-to-back years. And then sure enough, as life has it, a pandemic hits. I end up in Boston. I did not see that coming. If you had told me back when I was covering those championship teams that 4 years from now I'd be in Boston, I would have laughed and be like, "Yeah, right." And sure enough, here I am. And now, and you brought up, the Celtics being in the finals 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That was my first taste of it. That was my first year here. Of course, they lost it, but still, just being having a chance to cover a potential champion was a lot of fun, and I felt very fortunate. And now, 2 years later, I'm back, and as you said, it appears as though this team's going to get it done. It just, man, I just feel so fortunate. So now, if you're keeping score, if the Celtics get it done, I have an NBA Finals, I have a Stanley Cup, and I have a World Series. All that's
Yeah.
missing, my friend, is that
Super
Super
Bowl.
Bowl. So
Yes.
we need the Patriots to get back on track.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And like in that in itself is it's just remarkable when you think about like you've now have had the chance to cover three out of the four major championships in North American sports, which is I mean it's hard to do in this industry unless you're actively doing this every single day. But as you are, for example, and now when you look at the Celtics and what they've been able to do in the first two games, I got to start with game one and then also transition into game two. Game one and game two, the only thing that really stood out to me in terms of like the wow factor
Yep.
was the fact that the Celtics defense,
Yeah.
holy smokes. I mean, you have to start there. Like, as much as we talked about the Mavericks defense being probably the best the Celtics have faced since probably like the second round or even the third round against Indiana, but but the Celtics have had no troubles with this Mavericks defense at all. But the Celtics defensively and being able to like shut down Kyrie and everyone else in games one and in games two, and then making the big plays when warranted and when needed, including the Derek White block and like the plays that Drew Holiday has been making defensively, and not to forget obviously his offensive performance last night in game number two. Travis, like what has stood out to you in a run in which that it's been very hard to find surprises, but in games one and two there has been an element of surprise, especially when you look at how well and how dominant the Celtics defense has played.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, listen, I think it starts from the outside in. So you mentioned Drew Holiday. He's been
Yes.
absolute lockdown. I would also say, yes, he has been fantastic on the offensive end as well, having 26 points in game two. But
Mhm.
Jaylen Brown has done the same thing. Jaylen Brown has been absolutely lockdown, click clack style on defense, and he's also given you the offensive prowess as well in the production. But I say outside in because they are holding this Mavericks team. I mean, they shot in game two 23% from three
Yeah.
point. I mean, 6 for 26 from 3 point range. And that is very telling. They're also forcing Luca to turn the ball over. Even though he is getting his offensively, they are forcing him to turn the ball over. They are making him work. At the end of these games, Luca is gassed. He's given you everything he's got, but he is gassed, and that's because they're making him work. They're forcing tough shots on the defensive end, which he's gifted enough to still make them, obviously. But
Mhm.
then they're making him work defensively as well and making him guard his man. And then when I say outside in, I mean, we cannot understate the presence of Kristaps Porzingis. Now, everyone looks at the scoring, and I understand that. We know game one, he was lights out coming in off the bench. Game two, he also came off the bench and chipped in 12 points. But
Yep.
it's the defensive presence that is not getting enough attention. The blocks, the alteration of shots. I mean, he is deterring Mavericks from going to the cup. They get in there, they see that big joker, and they go the other way or they pass it. I mean, that may not show up in a box score or a stat sheet, but he is affecting the game. And just being there in person, too. When I saw him come out on the court, because he comes out a little later than the rest of the players for warm-ups. I'm sure it's because he's back in the back getting treatment.
Yeah.
But when he comes out, bro, not only does he get that, I mean, roaring ovation from the crowd, but he is freakishly tall. He is taller than what I even expected. And we know he's 7'3", but this dude is he's an absolute giant out there. And so seeing him in person up close made me realize why in the hell he is deterring all those shots. I
Yeah.
mean, that is a mountain of a man on the inside there in the paint area. And I just think that can't be understated as well on the defensive end. And Jason Tatum's doing a great job defensively, too. Everyone's quick to point out, well, he's not scoring, but he is crashing the boards. He is getting the assist. He's also playing absolute lockdown defense. If this team gets this done like you and I believe they're gonna do, it's coming from team defense, and it's also coming from sharing the ball offensively as a team as well. They are living and dying as a team, and you gotta appreciate that as a Boston fan.
Absolutely. And you talk about like sharing the ball, and Tatum had 12 assists last night.
Right.
He, in more ways than one, I want to talk about Tatum for a few minutes, because the thing that makes me mad about the Boston sports media right now is the way that they're talking about Jason Tatum and just kind of like trying to play him down, so to speak. And
Mm-hmm.
and then the national media trying to drive a wedge between Tatum and Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Jason Tatum has become more of a facilitator in this series. Yes, he's had his shooting woes, but that's not the lead story. The lead
Right.
story really should be how much he's become more of a facilitator. And I thought that he said something that was that was poignant in my opinion, which that he said that like I'm just going to paraphrase what he was saying in terms of, hey, I don't care about the fact that like, hey, like I have my struggles right now, but if I have to take a step back in order to be a facilitator to help this team win, I got to do whatever it takes, and so be it.
Right.
Like this team is so locked in right now that I don't even think Tatum's like shooting like problems, that I'm using the air quotes here, should even be the concern. I don't think that in itself is even the issue. The issue is the perception that he's not having a good final so far. He's impacting the game in other ways. Whereas he, like you meant, like Tatum is crashing the bros. He had nine rebounds last night. He had 12 assists. The same could be said about Drew Holiday. He had 11 rebounds last night. He also had the 3 assists as well. And Derek White and Jaylen Brown, they both had 3 steals apiece.
Right.
So you're seeing other players have other ways of impacting the game. And then also, how about that shot by Peyton Pritchard to end the third
Man.
quarter?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that too, man, because I don't know if at any given point that you take the shot and it goes in, but it did. That was
Mm-hmm.
a wow moment last night in game 2.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Peyton Pritchard's been doing that his whole Celtic career. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what this guy does. He provides those moments. And look, you know this. When we look back on championship teams, doesn't even matter what sport. There's always the role players. There's always the guys that you think about and you say, no chance that team would have won a title without that player's contributions.
I couldn't agree more.
And that's Peyton Pritchard, right? Like the
Yeah.
moments. I even saw a moment in game 2 where it was a mismatch where somehow, through the switches and the screens, Peyton Pritchard ended up on Derek Lively. I mean, right in front of the basket. And I'm thinking, oh boy, here we go. Mouse in the house. Derek Lively's going to dunk all over this kid for an M1. Peyton Pritchard, low man wins, stood his ground. And basically, I saw Derek Lively shoot a floater, which I'm like, bro, you're settling for a floater and Pritchard's on you. But I think that shows the toughness of the kid. And then that shot, like you said, but that's what he does. I'm not shocked at all. We'll look back and we'll say, the Celtics, obviously Pritchard's contributions played a big role in this championship run if they are to get it done. But I want to talk about Jason Tatum here because you bring
Absolutely.
up great points. And I'm glad that he's sort of pushing back on the narrative. Here's what I'll say about him. I just think we, the fans, and we, the media, are used to seeing championship teams look a certain way. This is not Jason Tatum's fault. It's just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
We are accustomed to seeing the alpha carry his team to a title. Get on my back. I got us. We're seeing it with Luka. It's not winning basketball right now, but Luka's doing his part for the Mavericks. You certainly can't blame him. You can blame
Yeah,
Kyrie. You can blame these other guys. Can't blame Luka. But
exactly.
that's what we're used to seeing. What's happening with this Celtics team and has been happening all regular season long is on any given night, Jason Tatum can beat you, Jaylen Brown can beat you, Derek White can beat you. It just changes. Porzingis can beat you, Drew Holiday can beat you. They are a quintessential team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it appears as though Jaylen Brown has become the most consistent, but even Jaylen Brown will tell you this isn't my team. This is our team. So it's just not what we're used to seeing. It's not the 1A player or the alpha carrying his team and saying, follow me. That's not how they do it. That's
Yep.
not how Joe Mazzulla coaches. Joe Mazzulla is the let's gather around by the campfire and sing kumbaya and make s'mores. And that's how they play. That's what they do. And that's what we're seeing. And so I give Jason Tatum a lot of credit for when his scoring is down or his shooting isn't going great or the defense is so dialed in on him that he can't get off offensively. He does not pout. He does not go back to the sideline and put a towel over his head and
Mm-hmm.
sulk. He gets in there and he gets rebounds and he gets assists and he's helping teammates and he's playing great defense and he's saying all the right things at the podium after the game.
Yep.
So I actually give praise and props on our shows to Jason Tatum. Do I wish he was scoring 40 a night? Sure I do. But that's just not who he is and that's not how this team is built.
And I couldn't agree more. In which that I think it's imperative that people start giving him credit. But of course, we're in the industry of it's about ratings. But the truth of the matter is that for the first time, and as far as that I can remember, a championship team is not being led by the quote unquote the top scorer, so to
Right.
speak. Okay, I want to bring up a moment that I saw last night following game 2 that I thought was so particularly telling. But I'm not sure if this is going to be talked about on Boston Sports Airwaves this morning. But it needs to be talked about, and we're going to talk about it on this podcast. I watched the post game show on NBA TV,
Mhm.
and Shaquille O'Neal, who was interviewing Jaylen Brown, and basically what happened was that Shaquille O'Neal, and the reason why this is so significant is because Shaquille O'Neal, in fact, was someone who you could look at and say that guy actually understands what it's like to be a part of one of the most dominant duos in the history of the NBA and know when to take a step back. So
Mhm.
last night, Shaquille O'Neal was saying in the post game, quote to Jaylen Brown, do not get fixated on useless titles. It ain't time for all that right now. Do what you gotta do and get it done. It
Mhm.
made so much sense because he played with Kobe Bryant, the late Kobe Bryant. He was part of that three-peat Laker team in the early 2000s. So if
Mhm.
anybody understands the importance of getting that first title and being part of a championship duo, it's him.
Yeah.
So Travis, when Shaq says something like that to Jaylen Brown, and for the rest of the NBA world to hear him say that, what is that significance to you in terms of what Shaq said, considering his his position and as well as his status as an all-time great in the history of the NBA?
Well, obviously, Jalen Brown looked like he appreciated that sentiment, but
Yeah.
you know, those guys, Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum, are completely different. Shaq, you have to remember, Shaq and Kobe, from the beginning, it was very contentious. You had a Kobe Bryant who was on the come up in his career. He was trying to prove that he belonged. I still remember Kobe shooting a pair of air balls against the Utah Jazz in a playoff game. And I can remember even being one of the voices at the time saying, well, why the hell is he taking that shot? Who does he think he is? And then Kobe, and then obviously the Mamba mentality was born and the rest is history.
Right.
But, it was contentious from the beginning. Kobe wanted to become an all time great. He was chasing the ghost of Michael Jordan. We understood that.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Shaq was dominant, but Kobe recognized that Shaq would come to camp out of shape. He wasn't taking it serious. He was more about rap and movies and his brand. So it was contentious from the beginning, those two. It was a fight for who is the alpha.
Yep.
Kobe needed to develop into one. Shaq was one, but wasn't really, he didn't have that mentality that Kobe wanted him to have. He did not have that Mamba mentality, if you will. And sure enough, they figured it out. They coexisted. They made it work over time. That has not been the case with Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. From the
Yeah.
beginning, they had veterans around them when they were just young pups. So
Mhm.
they kind of stayed in their lane, just developed, became the players that they are now. And then eventually, we in the media created this narrative. Oh, who's the man? Whose team is it? Do they like each other? But by all accounts, NBA players will tell you, their peers will tell you, media members who have been able to get close to both guys will tell you that they've always been tight. They've always been boys. They've always been friends. And so now it seems like they have figured it out. They have cracked the Da Vinci Code of how to coexist and win together. And my gut tells me this will be the first ring of many between the two of them. So it's completely different. I'm sure they understood and they appreciated where Shaq was coming from, but it is not the same. Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum's case is a one of one. It is
Mhm.
that rare, and we may never see it again.
And it's so rare that I don't think we've seen a dominant duo like Shaq and Kobe like ever since. And if and when Tatum and Brown finally get their first ring, and as I mentioned earlier, it's look like it's gonna be within the next few days or maybe in the next week.
Mm-hmm.
That they are, I think this is going to be just the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
because it just feels as if that right now you look across the NBA, yes, there are potential like challengers maybe next season moving forward, but if you were to look ahead to next season or even the next couple of years, bare minimum, it's 100% fair to expect that the Celtics will be championship favorites, with the fact that they're pretty much their starting five is pretty much locked down for at least another year.
Right.
So you look at the Celtics right now and I say, "Oh my god, what a massive opportunity if they are in fact able to close it out." And I think that they will. And you think ahead next year, like, hey, like, would they maybe, just maybe, is this the beginning of a championship era for the Celtics? Maybe, perhaps. And you said something interesting about we're used to championship teams looking a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually want to point something out, because did we really hear the complaints when the San Antonio Spurs were having their run of championships in the 2000s?
I did. I was complaining. I thought they were boring as hell.
They were boring. That's the thing. They were boring. But were we complaining about the alpha dog, quote unquote,
No.
like not scoring enough points? No.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point that I'm making. Like when it was on Tim Duncan and David Robinson, both Hall of Famers now. David Robinson,
Yep.
he retired following the '03 NBA Finals.
Yep.
We weren't complaining then.
That's
In
right.
'05, when it was Tim Duncan, Robert Horry, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, were we complaining then?
That's right.
No. No. In '07, when you also had Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan, and the rest of that squad. Oh, by the way, don't forget not to forget about Bruce Bowen, one of the
Yeah.
best one-on-one defenders in the history of the league. Were we complaining then? No.
Yep. Yep. That's right.
So where exactly did things change between teams that won multiple championships in an era versus the Celtics now? Like, what exactly has changed? Because I gotta ask this because it's starting to really bug the hell out of me. Like, why is it that this team in this duo of Tatum Brown has looked differently in comparison to other championship eras that we've seen in the last 20 years, whether it be the Spurs, whether it be the Lakers in the late 2000s and early 2010s, whether if it was the Golden State Warriors? What makes this team like any different?
Well, first of all, we got the cart before the horse right now.
Fair.
Let's see if they can get multiples, because I'll tell you a couple teams they remind me of, and most people, and you brought them up, most people say the Warriors, because of the volume of threes that they shoot. I get it,
Mhm.
but I don't know. I look at Steph and Clay, man. Those dudes were absolute assassins and would bury you. I mean,
Mhm.
like, obviously Steph, really the alpha for that franchise, but Clay was an assassin himself. And then when they got Kevin Durant, it was just unfair. So I don't personally see that. What I see when I look at the Celtics team, if they are to get multiple championships, they really remind me of the Miami Heat when LeBron went there. And here's
Fair,
here's
yeah.
here's how. So LeBron at that time was just the best player on the planet. He could do everything. So I'm going to go ahead and compare him. I'll say that's Jason Tatum's role on this team. We're
Mm.
seeing, if we weren't so used to the alpha and all this stuff that we just talked about, we're actually seeing the variety or the all aroundness to Jason Tatum's game right now, and he's not getting love for that. You and I are giving him love,
Yeah.
but you can see this guy could average a triple double if he wanted to.
Hmm.
He's that gifted when he gets in his bag. He has everything. He's got an all around game to him. Jaylen Brown, obviously, you could see the comparison to Dwayne Wade. Two guys, freak athletes that can attack the rim. They're not the greatest shooters you've ever seen, but if they get hot, they are streaky and they can bury you. Mid range game there, 3-point game if they're hot, they can do it. They can play defense. They're leaders. So the Dwayne Wade Jaylen Brown comparison works. In
Yes.
this analogy, Kristaps Porzingis would play the role of Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was
Oh, I
that
love that.
team's big man, protect the paint, grab rebounds, hit the open three when it's presented to you. Kristaps can do all of those things. If anything, I would say he has the advantage. He may not be the athlete Chris Bosh was, but he's certainly bigger than Chris Bosh was. So he's got the advantage there. And then you got a bunch of role players. And then remember, at the time of the early Miami Heat,
Hmm.
Eric Spoelstra at that time was unproven. He was a disciple of Pat Riley.
Yep.
Joe Mazzulla at this time, unproven, a disciple of Brad Stevens and Ime Udoka. So, I actually see the Miami Heat more in this team. And by the way, when you look back on LeBron's Miami Heat, that Heatles era, if you will,
Yep.
all of us are left feeling like, man, they should have won more championships.
100% should have.
I kind of feel like when we look back, when the smoke clears on this Tatum and Brown era, I do think there'll be multiple championships, but I also think we'll look back at that Golden State series. We'll look back at some of these Eastern Conference finals, like last
Against the
year when
Cavs. Yeah.
Cavs, last year when the Heat beat them. Like, we're
Correct.
going to look back and say, man, the Celtics team, they should have won more titles than they did.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm glad that you mentioned about like when we look back whenever the Tatum Brown era ends, like, hey, like there were missed opportunities, like and I'm hoping that obviously that they do win multiple championships, which is the only thing that would worry me is health,
Yeah.
because that was the sole reason, in my opinion,
Right.
that the big three of Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce did not win multiple championships.
Hmm.
Although they got the two NBA finals, they obviously won in '08, but it was health that did them in the 2010 NBA finals, especially for game 7 against the Lakers in LA. It was
Right.
health.
Right.
And it was also health even the year before that in the '08 '09 season. Health is what derailed that team from getting back to the NBA finals. And they end up losing to the Orlando Magic.
Hmm.
So health is going to be so important for this team moving forward. If this is a team in the core that's going to win multiple championships. But I want to focus on individual players for a moment, because when I look at Drew Holiday,
Hmm.
I said this to Justin Turpin of WEI back in February. And I said that I thought that at the time that Drew Holiday was the best acquisition that Brad Stevens made between him and Kristaps Porzingis. And that's taking nothing away from Porzingis. But now, through the end of the Eastern Conference Finals in games 3 and 4, to the beginning of the NBA Finals, again, taking nothing away from Porzingis, I said last night that if I had to vote for the NBA Finals right now through the first 2 games, in my opinion, it's got to be Drew Holiday. If you had to decide right now, obviously the decision is not going to happen after 2 games. But if you had to look at the Celtics team, you had to pick one player to be your NBA Finals MVP. Who would you pick and why?
Ooh, I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, Jalen Brown's the first person that came to mind. We know he had the big game one, game, and game two wasn't, a great statistical game in terms of scoring. But I
Right.
just look at how he's affecting the series. I just think defensively, he's just consistent, man. He's just a model of consistency and has been for the Celtics throughout all of the playoffs. I mean, every playoff run they've been in, he's been consistent. Even you and I talking about that finals that they lost to the Warriors. I mean, Jalen Brown was the most consistent player on the Celtics during that whole
Yep.
final. So he's playing big minutes. I mean, I would say Jalen Brown would be my vote, and then Drew Holiday would be right behind him. And then
Mhm.
I would also give some consideration to Derek White. And look, if Porzingis can have one more big game in this series, you got to throw him in the mix as well. But
Right.
I think if I had to vote right now, I'm with you. I think it's probably between Drew Holiday and Jalen Brown. I think my vote would go to Jalen Brown right now. But boy, after that game two, Drew Holiday had, and by the way, going
Mhm.
on the road now, right, to really try and put the foot on the neck and finish off the Mavericks is a championship that you need a championship medal. You need a player who knows how to get that done. That's what champions do. So I would not be shocked if we see another big game from Drew Holiday in game three. Hell, if that's the case, I'm definitely coming over to your side and giving him my vote. But if I had to vote today, I'd probably vote for Jalen Brown.
And I mentioned this last night on the Sports Hub, that I think Game 3, and that won't be until Wednesday night.
Right.
Game 3 is going to be a challenging game,
Mm-hmm.
because I have long believed this in sports, whether it's the NBA, NHL, or Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
A playoff series does not begin until you get to the home of the visiting team.
Right.
You're going to be in Dallas. So much has been made about Kyrie's ineffective play in Boston. Luka Doncic, although he played very well despite having the bruised chest in game
Mm-hmm.
2 and so forth. Now they're home. Now they're home in Dallas. And it's part of the reason why I look at game 3 with a little bit of concern, but I do think that if the Celtics, let's just say if they are going to have a singular game that's going to ultimately define what, again, we both believe is going to be banner number 18. I think it's going to be game 3 because we have not seen the best from both Kyrie and Luka. And
Right.
say what you will about Derek Lively or PJ Washington and company, but I think game 3 we might see a different beast from Luka and Kyrie, given that they're both down 0-2 to these Celtics. Your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. I think the Mavericks. I'll take it a step further. I think the Mavericks win Game 3. I mean, listen.
I'm
Let's
starting to feel the
face.
same way. I'm gonna keep it 1,000 with you, Travis. I really do.
Yeah. Let's face the facts here. This is a talented ass team, and I just don't see them getting swept. The Celtics. We talked earlier about how they played great defense on the Mavericks,
Yeah.
but the Celtics shot like crap. I mean, they shot
Yeah.
26%
Oh,
from three. Tatum is still not shooting well. Jalen Brown did not have a huge game. He turned the ball over, 6 times in that game. That the Mavericks were better. I'm looking at the stats right in front of me. Mavericks were better on the rebounding side of things. Look, they were in that game late. As bad as now, the Celtics are playing great defense, but their offense has not been great. And the Mavericks had a chance to steal that game late.
mm-hmm.
And don't even get me started. I actually thought that was a foul. I thought Jalen Brown pushed, and I thought Derek White got main man on the hand at the end of the game. That was not called. I mean, if that call is made, he hits those free throws. That's a 3-point game with a minute left. Who the hell knows? So, I say all that to say the Mavericks, they were in game 2. Game 1 was a beatdown, but they were in game 2. So I would not be shocked at all if they go back home. Kyrie has to get the hell out of Boston. It is clearly in his head. I
Yeah.
mean, he is missing in action these first 2 games. He's on the back of a milk carton somewhere. So I think he needs home cooking more than anyone.
Yeah.
And I just have to think they're going to play inspired, desperate basketball, and they're going to figure out a way to get one win. At this point, from what I've seen, this feels gentleman's sweep to me. It feels like Celtics in 5, but I do believe that I think the Mavericks find a way to win either Game 3 or Game 4. I'll go ahead for the sake of the combo with you and I and pick them to win Game 3. I think the Mavericks will win on Wednesday night.
I do agree with you um because my original prediction was Celtics in 6.
Me
That
too.
was my original prediction. And that was because of the fact that I respect this Mavericks team too much, in the
Mhm.
sense that I don't think they're just gonna just lay down and die.
Right.
If anything else, what I do think is that for the Mavericks, there is some element of good news in this. And I want to play
Right.
devil's advocate for just a moment, because Celtic fans may roll their eyes and so forth, but I'm gonna tell y'all the God honest truth. The fact that the Celtics shot like shit in game number 2
Yep.
is good news for Dallas, actually,
Hmm.
because their defense did play a role in the fact that the Celtics could not shoot a 3 if their life depended on it. They were that bad.
Right.
However, they are going to have to figure out a way to unlock Kyrie Irving for game number 3. And him being back home at American Airlines Arena and in Dallas is going to be important. It's going to be key. And I think that home cooking for these Mavericks is going to be imperative, because I'm sure they don't want to go down 0-3. And I think that obviously game 3 is must win for Dallas. But if you're the Celtics, if they were to somehow win game 3, if they were,
Hmm.
they're going to absolutely need a better offensive performance from Jason Tatum. They're going to need more from Al Horford. They're going to need more offensively from Jalen Brown. And that's not to call those guys out, but they knew it. And they said it last night after game 2. They are going to need more from everybody. And I think it's fair to say that Game 3 expected to be a dogfight in Dallas on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, listen, we'll see about the health of Kristaps Porzingis. We saw him get a little banged up at the end of game 2. He says he's going to play. You obviously have to believe him. But
Yeah.
I felt there was a big difference from his performance in game 1 when he was, 8 from 13 from the floor, 2 for 4 from 3, he had 20 points, absolutely electrifying, 3 big blocks, including a dunk attempt that he blocked. In game 2, he didn't play terrible, but I did think that, it seemingly was a drop off. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, that's understandable for a guy like him coming off an injury who sat out a long time. Maybe that adrenaline in game 1 is flowing. Game 2, it's a little bit different. And then again, we saw him get banged up late in that game. But he's playing around 23, 22 minutes. Uh, he did not shoot particularly well. He was 0 from 3-point. He
Mhm.
was 0 for 3. He only
Yeah.
finished with 12 points. I actually think Porzingis is going to be the key in game 3, especially with it being a road game, a place, a building that he's familiar with, he's played before. I think Porzingis, I'm really watching him for an offensive output. That's not to say that Tatum doesn't need to be better. That's not to say that, and you and I already talked about Drew Holiday having a big game. We both believe that's going to happen. We know Jaylen Brown's consistent, but I think Porzingis is really the key that I'm looking at
Mhm.
in that game, of game 3 in particular, to be the X factor offensively. We know what he brings defensively, but offensively, maybe Missoula can call some plays, get him involved early and often. That's who I would be looking at for an offensive uptick in game 3 is Kristaps Porzingis.
That fourth quarter last night, oh man, it was definitely something to behold. Whereas Derek White, because we talked about Drew Holiday already, but Derek White, he scored 8 points in that fourth quarter, but you had 2 critical 3-pointers in the fourth quarter, and was a big component in bolstering the Celtics defensively. What are some of your takeaways on Derek White through the first 2 games of the NBA Finals in terms of everything that he has done, and as well as just the fact that with every single game that he plays, that trade that Brad Stevens made 2 years ago to acquire him from San Antonio Spurs just looks even better and better and better.
Yeah, I mean, he's just efficient. He's one of those guys. He just lets the game come to him, and that is such a trait that I admire in anyone, not just sports. I mean, you're very much like this. You're so laid back and you just let things be the way they are and then you react accordingly. I don't have that trait. So that's why that's why I admire it. I'm a live wire. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I probably would have been traded because I'm a little more Marcus smart than I am anyone on this team in particular. But this team is just so zen, and Derek White is a part of that. He does
Yeah.
not rush anything. He does not force anything. He just lets the game come to him. I mean, he
Mhm.
averaged 15 points this season. You think he couldn't average more elsewhere? Of course he could. He's shooting 46% from the floor. He's just so smooth, bro. When I
Yeah.
watch him play, he is as smooth as they come, and that's who he is, and it fits perfectly with this team, and that's why on any given night he can be the best player, but he doesn't force that. He lets the defense dictate it. What are they going to do tonight? Oh, you're keying in on Tatum. Oh, you're trying to stop Brown from getting to the basket. No problem. Watch this. And he doesn't even call for the ball. When it comes to him, boom, splash. And many a times it's a dagger. So, I mean, look, game 1, you said it. I mean, this guy, 40%, 6 of 15
Yep.
from the field, 4 of 10, 40% from 3. Is that not consistency? Of course it is. Game 2, 45%, 5 of 11 from the floor. And a little bit, he didn't shoot the 3 particularly well. He's 3 of 8, but still, he's just consistent across the board. 18 points in game 1, 15 in game 2. This is who this guy is. And a lot of times in clutch situations, they look for Derek White. And I think that's smart as hell. And I told you, If he continues this, you know, especially if he keeps hitting these clutch shots, he's going to mess around and have his name in the hat for NBA Finals MVP as well. And it wouldn't
Yeah.
shock me if he wins it.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. In terms of like with Derek White and because like what he's been doing ever since he arrived to the Celtics is just it's just been nothing short of just incredible to watch. He's just gotten better and better in terms of his efficiency and as well as like the clutch gene and I've highlighted it just a little earlier on in the postseason where like he has a knack for coming through in the clutch
Yep.
and the big light the bright light does not affect him at all. In fact, he embraces it and whatnot. But
Yep.
as much as we talk about the players, I got to talk about Joe Mazzulla for just a moment, because like just one of two more questions left. But Joe Mazzulla, I've noticed that he's been somewhat of a tea kettle, just a little bit, but not to the full blown extent, but just a little bit. Like with the way that he's answered questions surrounding Tatum or Brown and just the national media like perspective on both of those guys, and you kind of saw it again last night like or yesterday rather with him just being tired of being asked about a one or two guys or whatnot when it really has been a team effort. Travis, like when you were there for game two last night, like what was the temperature surrounding like Joe Mazzulla, if you will, during his post game presser? Because it just seems to me as if that he has a lot more edge, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I don't look too much into that. It's probably just the, amount of media is a lot more, but the local media, we already know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're used to seeing it. I think he's just the world now is getting more of a glimpse into who Joe Mazzulla is. But one thing about him that I respect, he is always himself. He does not he does not put on any fronts for anyone, and I respect
Yeah.
that. I think the players respect that too. Here's one thing though to think about with Joe Mazzulla. So you remember I made the comparison earlier in the interview
Yeah.
to the Miami Heat. And I said at the time that the Heat started winning and when LeBron got there, Eric Spoelstra at that time was unproven and he had to kind of earn his stripes, which he did and then some for years
Hmm.
to come and still is. I made that comparison with Joe Mazzulla that we just don't know yet. He's still earning his stripes. But here's one big picture thing to think about, brother. Charles Lee is already gone. He's taken that Hornets job. I think it's just a matter of time before Sam Cassell is a head coach in this league. It actually, to be honest with you, feels overdue to me.
Yeah.
So now with success, your assistant coaches are going to start being poached here every single year.
Hmm.
And I am telling you from what I know, this is not opinion, this is fact.
Hmm.
Joe Mazzulla has the best coaching staff in the NBA. And we're going to start to see these guys get more opportunities. And that's going to get thinner and thinner, which means you're going to put more onus and more responsibility and more weight on Joe
Hmm.
Mazzulla. So if we're going to be talking multiple championships here, and we'll
Right.
see if that comes to fruition, Joe Mazzulla is going to have to elevate his game as well. Now, I'm not taking anything away from him. I think he's done a tremendous job in these finals, but that is the reality. He must continue to get better and evolve. And he's young and he's a hard worker. So common sense tells us all that he should be able to do that. But that is what Eric Spoelstra did. That is what all of these great coaches in the NBA, they were young once. Same thing. You must continue to get better. You must continue to evolve. If Missoula can do that, we can have the multiple championship conversation. If Missoula does not, and if Missoula is exposed as his assistants start to leave, well, now Brad Stevens is at yet another crossroads of, well, damn, do I continue to watch these championships fall by the wayside and go out and get a coach who can win now? Or do I stick with my guy in Joe Mazzulla? It's going to be fascinating to watch over the years.
And it's an interesting point that you bring up because like right now I think you can make an argument that the coaching staff of the Boston Celtics does not get the same amount of love as the players do. I thought at the beginning of the year,
Mhm.
getting a coach like Sam Cassell who has won, who was part of the '08 championship team with the Celtics on as a part of the coaching staff was huge.
Mhm.
Because before the season started, I was saying this, I was like, I am a big believer that bringing in guys who have won and showing them what it takes to win, you need
Mhm.
that right now for this group, and it's obviously worked out beautifully. And I think that when you begin to look at like the coaches and as well as like the coaching stuff and how it's all assembled and so forth, and you brought up an interesting point about like Brad Stevens, like if that scenario were to come to be, and hopefully it doesn't, that this is something that could be you can really start asking like the pertinent questions, like, hey, like what the heck do I do here, like, and so forth. But thankfully we're not there. And in the final question I'll ask you to conclude it,
Mhm.
now with the series in Dallas, Celtics are up 2-0.
Yep.
And with everything that we've talked about, from Tatum and Brown to the entire Celtics team to Dallas and their struggles with in terms of Kyrie's performances and so forth,
Yep.
how do you see things playing out in terms of these two games in Dallas, and whether if you think this will be a clean sweep, or will we see a game five? Because my original prediction was Celtics in six, but I do believe that home court should serve the Mavericks well, and we might see a game five at bare minimum. What are your thoughts on how do you think the two games in Dallas will play out?
Man, this will not surprise you, but you and I are in lockstep as always. When this series started, I said Celtics in six as well. And I just thought probably what you did, that Luca and Kyrie are too great of a dynamic duo to not get a couple of games. Now, as we've seen the series play out, Kyrie, as I said, has just been missing in action. Luca's been doing his part, but that's not enough. The Mavericks are star dependent. They depend on both of those guys. And quite frankly, they are here in the finals because both of those dudes have figured out how to both cook at the same
Mhm.
time. So you have to give credit to the Celtics defense for taking one away. I mean, obviously, like Kyrie, yeah, you could say he's playing bad. Yeah, you could say mentally being in Boston is tough for him. I think all those things are true, but you also have to give the Celtics props for the clamps that they put on. So what I'm thinking is Dallas goes back home. They're going to win game 3 or 4. I don't think they win both. I think they'll win 3 or 4. And then I think the Celtics put them away at home, game 5 at TD Garden. So you and I both came into the series thinking six. Now it sounds like we're remixing that and we're both going Celtics in 5 at home. I
Yeah.
think they close them out next Monday night at home at TD Garden. And it is going to be absolute pandemonium, my friend.
And for all the hard work that you've been putting in, I certainly hope the rest of your day is as like zenful and as peaceful as it possibly
It
as it
won't
could
be.
be.
It won't be. Listen, I'm going back to the studio. And check this out. This week's
So,
actually a big week. So we have the Tom Brady retirement ceremony in
yeah, that's right.
Foxborough.
That's on Wednesday. You're right.
Yeah, and then I actually have a interview lined up this week with absolute music icon and Boston icon Michael Bivins that I'm really excited about, bro.
Nice.
So, please, if you're out there listening, check out. You can just go right on YouTube. NESN has now put their shows on YouTube. You can just punch in NESN. If you're not already following us, please subscribe and like and share our videos. You can check out all of our episodes there. I host a Celtic show called Hold My Banner, a Patriot show called Foxborough Rush. We do a daily Boston sports talk show called Boston Has Entered the Chat. You can check them all out on YouTube and Facebook, and we're all over social media. We're also podcasts, so you can check us out wherever you get your podcasts, like Spotify and all that. We're everywhere like air, bro. We're all over the place like space. So check us out at NESN. We got a lot of new, fun, exciting shows. I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Absolutely, definitely check it out. Go to NESN's YouTube channel and check out the shows that Travis Thomas is a part of, covering the Boston sports scenes and teams as well. And Travis Thomas of NESN and WEI, thank you, my man, for taking the time to hop on during these NBA finals as the Celtics are sitting pretty up 2-0 in this series. The remainder of the series remains to be seen, but I appreciate you taking some time to talk about the Celtics NBA Finals so far.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I'm on radio this weekend, by the way, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on WEEI. So
Oh, that's
you know,
perfect.
hey, man, I'm throwing up that bad signal, bro. You get a
No, yeah,
chance,
no,
you
no.
riding
Listen, I
around.
got it. Now I'm gonna keep that in mind. Like Saturday from 3 to 6 on
Yeah.
WEI. Got you. I'll say less.
Yes, sir. Because it's always an honor, man. When I see that phone light up, this is a true story. I'll tell this before we go, bro. The
Absolutely.
last time you called my show, I was about to go to break, and I saw your name because I got a call sheet that tells me your name, and I said,
Yeah.
oh no. So I teased it. I said, all right, we're going to break. When we come back here on the Travis Thomas Experience, we got the legend coming through, and then I gave you a whole block of time. You know what I mean? So hey, man, you
Yeah.
riding around on Saturday, man. Show me some love. You know, I'm going to punch you through and we'll talk Celtics on my show this time.
Absolutely. You already know it's gonna go down on your show on WEI. And those of you that are outside of New England, you can listen to the show on the Odyssey app as well. Travis, my man, thank you, my guy,
Oh,
for
man.
everything, man.
Absolutely, bro. You be well, bro.